I recently made an episode on the BR Rundown about the state of Fortnite with the introduction of version 8.20, and you could go back and recap that. I'm not even going to get into that in this video, but I got to say I was pretty unhappy, and now another change is being brought to fruition by Epic. And of course, you've probably seen it all over Twitter, Reddit, and your timeline, and that is the fact that they are getting rid of stretched resolutions inside of competitive modes. That includes ranked mode, as well as the World Cup, and also most likely the LAN events as well. And this has brought a shock to the community because this is something that I feel is not in the right direction that we are going when it comes to Fortnite. But first, let's start off. When did the fight for stretch res begin in Fortnite? Why did it become such a popular thing to be talked about? Well, before PAX West, there were several pros using different forms of stretch resolution. Most notably, Myth and Tfue were using it. And of course, they felt that it gave them a competitive edge, and at least they were comfortable with it. Whether it was because of previous games or not, it was what they were used to playing. And over time, this became an ugly sight to see, especially when we're only used to native resolution, right? It looked ugly to us, but the fact is the competitors didn't care, right? It gave them a competitive edge, and that was what they were used to. But then we moved into PAX West, and Epic made a ban on stretch resolution. They said at PAX West, we are not going to allow any different aspect ratio other than the native resolution. And this caused quite a stir within the community, but not so much as it has as of now. In fact, eventually over time, we went back to normal and people were using native resolution, but then over time, stretch resolution started to come back. And we saw most of the competitive players, at least to date, using a form of stretch resolution. It allows for a better frame per second, right? It allows for a more competitive experience for the player. And over time, Epic started seeing, hey, maybe the competitive community wants to keep a stretch resolution, so why don't we give in and let them use it? And then we had a breakthrough with the Secret Skirmish. And at the Secret Skirmish, the pros were allowed to use whatever resolution they wanted to use. And this was a huge win for the competitive scene. Now, fast forward a couple of months, and now Epic has announced they want to get rid of the stretch resolution. They want no other resolution used besides the native resolution. But why would Epic want to ban the use of a stretch resolution? Well, I've got a couple of reasons, and I'm going to try and back them up as much as possible during this section. Look, it's no secret that the use of the of the stretch resolution gives you some sort of a competitive advantage. It increases a player's FPS rate. It also allows for a better response rate in-game due to FPS. The vertical field of view being increased could help players maintain track of the players they're build fighting against up close. Of course, they do get rid of, or at least they neglect their long range fights, right? Because whenever you increase your vertical, you are in fact increasing or decreasing your horizontal fighting abilities, right? That makes sense. But also changing to a stretch resolution is only available for PC players. And with Fortnite being a cross-platform game, Epic has always been about having the competitive field be as equal as possible. That's why they included mobile and Switch players to be playing alongside PC, PS4, and Xbox players, right? As of recently, they want at least the game so far to have the same feel across all platforms. And the biggest issue with stretch resolution is the fact that console players cannot, in fact, change their resolution. They're locked onto the native resolution. So when it comes to them, at least the PS4, the Xbox scene, Switch scene, whatever, they feel they have a huge disadvantage because when it comes to the hardware of a PS4 and Xbox, they're extremely limited. And when you talk about the in-game fights that we currently see, or at least in the competitive mode, especially at the higher tiers or the higher leagues, you start seeing 40 to 50 player final circles. And clearly, your hardware is going to be very taxed, especially if you're using a PS4 or Xbox, and it simply can't keep up. You're losing frames, and it makes it almost impossible to play. And Nick Burks kind of made a comment on this in his stream the other day where he was saying, look, if you're going to want to be a competitive player, you really are forced to transfer over towards PC because with PC, it allows you to have better hardware and a better playing experience. And it makes sense. Now, this isn't a conversation between controller players and PC and mouse and keyboard players. It's not by any means. You've seen Nick Merckx, you've seen Aiden, and they've transferred over to PC using a controller, right? So it is possible for these controller players to transfer over. But if you want to stay traditional PS4, Xbox, not being able to change your resolution, it does give you a sort of a disadvantage, if you will, because you can't squeeze out as many frames as would be possible on PS4 and Xbox. So for me, this is a reason why Epic kind of wants to ban stretch resolutions to make everything a little bit more equal. And another reason I feel they're banning the stretch resolution is something they did back in PAX West and even for E3. And one of those reasons is they're pulling at least minimum 100 different feeds. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, a feed is basically essentially a capture card where they're taking a cable and they're running it from the computer so they can capture the screen point of view of the player playing. And whenever you're doing that, you're capturing the exact screen that they're looking at. So if you're talking about running a tournament from a production standpoint, production value wise, it gets degraded when you have different points of view. You have different resolutions across different players, and it doesn't allow for the best viewing experience possible. So that's another reason why I thought Fortnite might be doing this. But then again, they have a spectator mode, but they could still want that consistency across the view and experience board, simply for the fact in case the spectator mode, breaks down or something's wrong with it, and they just want a contingency. They want a backup plan, right? So that's why they would want the feed. But now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this, and we're going to talk about how I feel about this issue. And to be quite honest with you, I'm confused. I'm very confused as to why Epic is getting rid of stretch resolution. It doesn't make sense to me. And I can't tell with all the changes they have made recently if they want the competitive scene to thrive or if they want it to die. I really, truly can't tell. And one update, I'm extremely happy, right? And I'm very happy they're introducing pop-up cup rules to all playlists. We have the pop-up cups, the gauntlet cups going on. And then, it's just as competitive in the public lobbies, at least for me. And then they come up with an update where they get rid of the public lobbies. The public lobby is still there, but they get rid of the pop-up cup rules, right? Which creates for a very boring experience over on the public side, but they give us a ranked mode. I'm happy for that, right? And it's awesome. But then we're less than a week, or at least roughly a week away from the World Cup, and they're wanting to get rid of stretch resolution, which they were against, and then they were for and allowed it, and now they're getting rid of it again. It doesn't make sense to me. There's no consistency. These pros who have been playing all of this time on their set resolution that they're comfortable with now has to change after grinding it out in ranked mode, making it to where they can at least qualify for the World Cup, right? Because they made the Championship League, and they're going to be competing at least for $10 million coming up in the World Cup. And you're telling me that you're going to get rid of what they were used to, at least one of the main consistencies they have had throughout months after months, and that is their resolution? It makes no sense to me. It's confusing, and I don't get why Epic is wanting to do this. As an avid esports fan, I want to watch the community grow as it has been for the past 2 years. And when I watch an event, I want to see the pros play at the best of their abilities. But now you're starting to throw a wrench or a curveball at their strategy, at their overall playability. Look, Fortnite, it's no secret. They love to make changes before events. All right, we've seen it time and time again. The Affinity Sword, right? The anti-gravity zone where people were just shooting up into the sky. The list goes on and on. And now you want to take away stretch resolution, something that they at least were all for, and you want to try and make the playing field as even as possible from PC players and console players. It's a valiant effort, but it's not realistic. The point is the PS4 and Xbox can't handle the in-game fights. It's because it's just graphically intensive, and the hardware just won't be able to sustain it. It has nothing to do with an aspect ratio. It has nothing to do with changing your field of view. Okay? Stretch resolution isn't going to magically fix a PS4's ability to handle the in-game fights on the hardware. If you want to be the best player, maybe you should try investing at least into a better PC, right? I think that's the way to go about it if you truly want to be the best. That's why we have seen Nick, Mercs, and Aiden and other competitive players who are typically on the console scene have switched over to PC. They still use their controller, but now they have the best hardware. But overall, this isn't the answer that we need for competitive gaming, and no one was asking for this. Just like no one was asking to get rid of the 40% siphon rate in the public lobbies. These changes are coming out of nowhere, and I am confused on it. Ninja's confused on it. If you go look at his statements, he doesn't understand what Epic's plan is for the future, at least for this game in general. It doesn't make sense. But ultimately, my frustration isn't with Epic getting rid of stretch resolution. My frustration is the fact that there's no consistency. You go back to, they made the decision during PAX West to get rid of it. I get it. They should have stuck with that and said native resolution is going to be the only resolution that we are going to use throughout competitive Fortnite. Bottom line. But the fact that they came back and said, hey, for the secret skirmish and for ranked mode, you're going to be allowed to use stretch resolution, they gave this false sense of security to these players who were using stretch resolution that it was going to stay. But it's not. Epic needs to find a more consistent way, a more consistent guideline. We now have a set rule set that we see in competitive. I'm happy with that. But now we're changing the peripherals. We're changing the resolutions. It makes no sense. We're nitpicking at things that shouldn't be nitpicked at. Every game uses a custom resolution if they want to use it. Look at CSGO, right? Or any other PC game. You can change your resolutions. It makes no sense as to why we're trying to get rid of it now. But overall, this trend needs to stop. And we need some consistency. And Epic, please settle on a consistent rule set and a guideline as to how you want these players to play. I have spent countless hours playing and watching competitive Fortnite or Fortnite in general, and I love this game. I truly do. And I want this game to thrive in the future, and I think it can. We have the money clearly to back it up, right? We're talking about a World Cup that's coming up. Everybody's been talking about it. They're excited about it. Now all you need is a consistent guideline and a rule set to back that up. And if you have that, I think it'd be okay. But overall, we need consistency, and we need it now.